So what happens when one of India's biggest internet stars, a guy at the absolute top of his game, almost loses everything over a single comment made on his show? And here's the crazy part. He wasn't even the one who said it. This is the story of how a viral clip just spiraled out of control into this huge national crisis that threatened his career, his money, and honestly, even his sanity. Okay, so the first thing that happened wasn't just some angry tweets. Nope. It was this. Three separate official police complaints, what they call FIRs in India, were filed against him. And just so we're clear, these weren't coming from random people on the internet. We are talking about serious, heavyweight legal action. We're talking powerful people, including a state's chief minister getting involved. And they were filed all over the country, which basically turned a social media mess into a real-life, multi-state legal nightmare for him. Now let's talk about the money, because this number is staggering. 8 crore rupees. That's about $1 million US. And this wasn't just, money he might make in the future. No, this was the money from his biggest ever US tour, which he was right in the middle of. If he had to cancel, he would have lost, and he said this himself, his entire life savings. Everything. Everything he'd ever worked for, just gone. Which brings us to the big question, right? How on earth did one comment from a guest on his show blow up into this? Well, to really get the fall, you first have to see just how high up he was. So let's just rewind to right before all this madness started. Samay Rina wasn't just another successful comedian. He was, in his own words, a king. In his show, it was a phenomenon. To give you an idea of his reach, look at this number. 4 crore. That means his show, India's Got Latent, was being watched on 40 million different devices every single month. I mean, in a country of 1.4 billion people, that's like 1 out of every 35 people was tuning in. The guy was a massive force in Indian entertainment. He was at the absolute peak. I mean, every video he posted was getting millions of views, every tweet went viral, and he had just kicked off his most ambitious project ever, a huge sold-out tour across the United States. He was on top of the world. And then came the moment it all started to fall apart. So on one episode of his show, a pretty well-known guest, who goes by Beer Biceps, made a controversial joke. Now, Samay says he actually edited out most of the really offensive stuff, but one little bit slipped through. And that was all it took. And the speed at which this thing blew up was just brutal. Day 1, the episode goes up. Day 2, you get a few angry tweets from some members. But by day 3, he was the #1 trending topic in the entire country. National news channels were running primetime debates about him. And by day 4, the whole thing jumped from the internet into the real world, with actual police cases being filed. The pylon was just insane. It was coming from everywhere. You had politicians weighing in. News channels were running these segments with headlines like, "They are ruining the country." Even some of his fellow comedians were speaking out against him. And then, in this totally surreal twist, the actor who played Shaktiman, India's Superman, put out a statement about him. It felt like everyone, literally everyone, was coming for him. And get this, while this whole firestorm is erupting back in India, Samay's thousands of miles away in the US, just trying to do his sold-out shows. And this is where the public crisis really crashes into his personal life. Just minutes before he's supposed to walk on stage in Seattle, the pressure just became too much. He described it, trembling, heart pounding out of his chest, sweating, couldn't breathe. The weight of the whole thing just came crashing down on him, and he had a complete physical breakdown. So you have to understand, he was getting hit from all sides, all at once. Financially, his entire life's work was on the line. Legally, he's facing these serious charges from the highest levels of government. And then personally, his phone number gets leaked, and his phone is just blowing up with death threats. Not just for him, but for his parents too. The mental toll got so bad that he says he actually went into a state of psychosis. He talked about looking at the world, at his own hands, and just not being able to tell if any of it was real or if he was in some horrible dream. He called it the worst state a human being can possibly be in. So there he is, at his absolute lowest point, completely falling apart. And he finds a lifeline in the most simple, incredible place, a phone call with his dad. Samay's on the phone, he's crying, he's telling his dad that the show is gone, that everything is over, and his dad just says this to him. The show exists because of you. You don't exist because of the show. It's so simple, but so powerful. And that one sentence just changed everything. It pulled him back to reality. It reminded him that this life, this fame thing, it's a wild ride. There are going to be insane highs and there are going to be terrifying lows. His dad treated this whole disaster not like the end of the world, but just as a low, and that was the perspective he needed to find his feet again. So he finished a tour, he came back to India. But that whole experience, it completely changed him. He came back with this whole new understanding of the internet, of fame, and what it really takes to survive as a creator today. And out of all this, he came up with this really interesting survival strategy. He decided you can't be your real self online. You have to play a character. He says being the clean guy is a trap. Sure, everyone loves you, but you live in constant fear because you make one mistake and they'll tear you down. So instead, he adopted what he calls the jerk persona. And why? Because if everyone already thinks you're kind of a jerk, nobody expects you to be perfect. It's freedom. So, when he finally meets with the police back in Mumbai, they ask him a simple question. Are you going to apologize? And this put him in a tough spot. You know, as a comedian, he believes this George Orwell quote, that jokes are meant to be a kind of rebellion. So apologizing felt like giving up, like betraying his whole art form. But then he had to weigh that idea of revolution against, well, reality. The police basically told him, look, you can do that and you'll go to jail. In the end, he chose to apologize. And he framed it as a lesson he learned from his family's history as Kashmiri Pandits, who had to flee their homes to survive. The lesson was, you only fight when the fight is fair. When it's not, you survive. And boy, did he survive. After all the dust settled from the controversy, he announced his next big international tour, this time through Europe and Australia. He sold 300,000 tickets. The audience didn't just stay with him, it actually got bigger. In the end, this whole insane experience gave Samai this totally new perspective on work, life, and what's actually important. He basically argues that we've got it all wrong. A day you spend grinding away on a spreadsheet isn't productive. It's just a day you wasted for money. He says the really productive days, those are the days you spend with your friends, with your family. And so his story leaves us all with this one last question to think about for ourselves.